There's a dichotomy in retail that I see, which is kind of an obvious one. But basically, you had this huge amount of brands who were pursuing a very specific playbook in the mid-century, which was get as many stores out there with a big footprint and great prices and great selection. And that proximity alone would effectively lead to top line growth. And it was right. In the mid-century, interstates were going down. But that playbook stopped being relevant recently. And now you've got this point where you have these legacy retailers who are like, what do I do with this infrastructure? And you have all these disruptors, like the Allbirds, the Bonobos, Warby Parker. They're able to come in with smaller footprints and with a completely omni-channel backend. Like an order is an order, whether or not it's in the store or online. But what's interesting is I also believe that playbook is going to stop working in the future. And so one of the challenges I've seen that's so hard for retail brands to get their arms around is that while you want to focus on this high-level customer experience, it's really sexy and it's so cool, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. But beneath the water is the orchestration necessary to get all the layers of the cake in line. It's like, what's the supply chain of the future? What's the HR of the future? How do you train associates? What's the stocking and inventory of the future? And that is actually it. And it's not a sexy answer, but it's the real answer. Because if you don't have the inventory figured out, you could have the coolest experience of your life. And if you're out of products, what was the point? Or you could have an amazing in-store experience, but if marketing doesn't know about it, no one's gonna show up. And it's those silos that are required to be broken down. And believe it or not, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that retail faces today is intra-organizational challenge. There's headwinds out there for sure, but it's just communication, just talking about how they all work together and having cross-org incentives. When you're thinking about how you become a high-velocity retailer, there's often a lot of debate on where you do start. And so I have a pretty specific approach for advising my retail partners on how to think about it. And that is you have to really focus, but in a way where the math works out. So there's this whole thesis that we talk about a lot, which is treat your stores like software. And what that means is, so I used to work at eBay as an example, and we would spend a tremendous amount of effort looking at the waterfall. So how many people would go from a landing page to a product page to cart to checkout? And we'd focus on the friction points within that, and we'd focus on those. And so in the same way, a store is actually very similar. Like, think about this. You walk into a store and you know what you want, you're searching. Or you'd like some inspiration, browsing. Search versus browse. Sounds like a landing page. Or you walk to all the shelves of the mannequins and you see beautiful products, so you're gathering information on whether or not you're interested in that product. Product pages. You take the product into your cart or into a fitting room to try it out. That's a cart, and cash wrap is checkout. And so what I say is, look at those data points in the store and focus on what's going to create the most value. And there's all these data points out there. Like, if someone sees a product on a shelf they love, but the size, cut, or color isn't physically in front of them, 48% of customers will not ask for help. And the killer is 81% of the time, it's in the stockroom, 20 feet away. You're just leaving money on the table. Or another one is, if a customer sees a line they just perceive as being over 7 minutes long, 71% of customers will abandon with their products in their frigging hands. It's so painful. But then, if you get like a product in a cart or someone in a fitting room, there's a very high chance they're gonna convert. So what I say is, think about your total customer base, and if it's, if you sell beauty, maybe it's the people that use your salon or just buy products. Or if you're in home improvement, it's the pro users versus DIY. Or if you're in soft goods, it's like the casual browser versus the stylist. And figure out what customer journey, what conversion funnel they go on the most, that creates the most value or is the highest volume, and just focus in on just that. And if you just choose one, it could be, I'm gonna focus on the journey that involves someone going online, picking up it in store. Like, that's it, focus. I'm just gonna focus on focus, and you nail it. It's gonna take you 6 months. And you're gonna learn so much about how the store actually works, about how associates are incentivized, about whether or not your infrastructure is up to par, the Wi-Fi works, there's power drops. And once you've done that, you've really focused on the single customer journey that matters the most, you then have earned the right to start thinking about more. So where you start is where it matters, and how you know where it matters is what the data tells you. That's kind of the sequence, which perhaps sounds obvious, but I find so many technologists will just do tech for the sake of tech because it's easy or fun, or they want the promotion, or they'll just do what they want to do because they think it matters without really looking at the data. So that's the discipline that I recommend. There's a couple challenges that a lot of retailers run into. One is they haven't defined success. And what that means is that just looking at sales metrics alone isn't enough. It's really important. It's incredibly important. And you have to drive top line, and we all know that. But it can actually be a false positive sometimes. You have to actually look, did the customers truly love this? Is this really making their lives easier? Do the associates promote this? Does it really make them more effective? And is there a cross-functional benefit? You know, if you have an improvement in a store, are the online sales in the area also going up? And it's that concatenation, the kind of all of those coming together that are required for you to then say, if this is successful, here's what this looks like. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in rooms with retail executives talking about, okay, here's a great idea for something you want to test out. Now, what is success and how do you know if it's worth scaling this? And they look me in the eye and say, you know, I actually don't know. I'd love help, because there's not really industry benchmarks for a lot of this stuff. And so that is definitely one of the challenges, is that people don't think through what success is. Another huge challenge I see all the time is what I call the human behavior challenge. People believe that just because something out there seems interesting, that humans are going to change what they do. I'm sorry, they're not. So don't create a net new use case and be like, oh, they'll do this. Everyone likes drone deliveries with holograms. Like, no one's going to do that. Find the thing that they're already doing and just try to make it better. Otherwise, you're going to be in a really, really tough spot. And then the last thing, and this is, it's one of the top 3 challenges that people run into unknowingly, is they don't realize that by introducing a new experience or a new technology in the attempt to reduce friction, they actually create more friction. And so I call this a net friction score. And that's got to be a lens that everyone applies to whatever it is they're doing. The actions that retailers take today will determine the winners and losers in 5 years from today. And the winners will be those who come at it with a mindset of possibilities and think past what's happening today. And the losers will be those who are so hyper-focused on the competitive landscape that all they get are incremental benefits. I think about Amazon a ton. What they're doing today is stuff they thought of 3 to 5 years ago. And so if you focus all your efforts on trying to keep up with Amazon today, you're never gonna keep up. It's boring, but I'm really excited about 2 big innovations right now. One is centralized order management and fulfillment, boring. And then the second one is inventory accuracy. And I know those are not exciting, but people don't know what's in their stores. You know, the average inventory accuracy is 65%. 1 out of 3 things, they're like, yeah, I don't know if it's there. It's crazy. And so this mass of kind of OCR and RFID coming into place, I think is going to be really interesting. And I believe that the foundation's getting there, that the tools on top of it are going to finally be really useful. So I'm really excited about that. And the second is I see these amazing moments of progress with point of sale and order management, which is it can centralize and collect all the requests coming from all the different channels out there and also organize it so it comes from the most convenient place. And that seems maybe really boring, but I can't tell you how much IT effort is spent on just like trying to reconcile where things come from, where it goes. Those aren't really exciting, I know, but I do believe those are really interesting. I think the business model of retail is being flipped on its head. And I think about companies like Beta a lot, which I think are amazing, where they're not taking inventory risks anymore. They're not trying to figure out exactly how much they buy and what margins. They're just saying, here's a beautiful space for your brand to shine. It's your ability to tell your message, and your sales are your sales. It's so powerful because it's so simple. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of that. I think there's a simple reality that retail leadership needs to embrace. And that is, the power of software tools. And I know that seems like, okay, but that's really it. It's you have a generation of leaders right now who didn't grow up with software tools as their core way of working. And you have a whole consumer base, and they're getting the majority of wallet spend now, who have grown up on messaging platforms like Slack, who've grown up on to-do platforms like Monday.com, who've grown up on Jira, and this is their life, and they don't realize that if you don't start to embrace tools for your workforce, for who's operating your daily operations, then you're gonna be behind the curve of those brands that do have that from day one, because it's not about predictions while it is, it's about the quality of your data and then the quality of the questions you could ask around your data and the quality of information you're getting from it. And so I do see a big change, and you can see it. You can see the way that, a leader of a new digitally native brand talks about their business, the KPIs they think about, versus the leader of, another kind of way in. So I think that's gonna be one of the big ones.